WELSTech is a bi-weekly podcast exploring the intersections of technology and ministry. It is part of the podcast network sponsored by WELS, the Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod. Our show today is hosted by Martin Spriggs and Sally Draper. Welcome back to WELSTech, everybody. This is episode 706. That's 706. And we're recording it on Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. My name is Martin Spriggs, and this is a show about technology and ministry and where those two intersect. Joining me as usual from Mankato, Minnesota, North Mankato, Minnesota, to be exact, Sally Draper. Hello, Sally.
Hi, Martin. Happy to be joining you. Happy to have you back. We've been missing Martin Spriggs around the office these days. You've been there and back again to Synod Convention. How was that experience?
Nice. We were over in Saginaw, Michigan at Michigan Lutheran Seminary. They were a great host. We had a great group of delegates. Beautiful days there as well. Weather cooperated, which is important cool. There. They're a little smaller campus than MLC and even Luther Prep, which are the three campuses that we rotate through every 2 years for Synod Convention. So they have to set up tents outside, and that worked out really well. Not a lot of fireworks at this convention. There were some discussions about studies on critical race theory and those kinds of things, but by and large, everybody was of one mind, and I think good business was conducted. And it's always good to talk to WELSTech listeners, met a few there, and talk technology with a lot of different people. So it's a good time. Very nice.
And tech at Synod Convention went smoothly for you?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, we were challenged a little bit by the infrastructure. Wi-Fi was a little shaky once in a while, but we implemented for the first time at Synod Convention e-voting. We used a product called eBallot. eBallot.com if you're interested. And that performed pretty well. I learned a few things along the way because I couldn't really test it with 400 voters. But it was very easy to set up and feel pretty comfortable with it at this point, and fairly inexpensive. So if you're holding a conference, or even if you want electronic voting of any kind, whether it's a disparate group, I guess you could do voters meetings this way too. It's actually works pretty well. It's easy to get an account and import users and give them passwords, that kind of stuff. Works well on mobile devices as well. So that part went real well. We reelected successfully President Schrader, and Pastor Voss, second vice president. And then all the normal elections that we do for boards and committees and those kinds of things. So that was actually a neat experience to implement that.
I'm sure that elections committee was really wishing they had Scantron ballots instead.
Backups, yes.
It seems to me that I remember handing out slips of paper at a convention a long time ago. So it's been done a lot of ways, and electronically, I'm sure, was very preferred.
So there's probably no going back, Martin? At this point. Yeah, I did.
I wondered, because you don't normally, but that had to be kind of hold your breath moment, that first
and
vote.
I was really kind of the only tech support there. So for a 1 to 400 ratio, that's a little dicey. But it was all good, and I think people were understanding of some of the challenges that doing that creates, but that's fine. So. But it was a good experience. So
that's great. Congratulations. But
what have you been up to lately?
Well, it's been a good month or so, and I'm just working hard on physical therapy. Sally's relearning to walk, so that's my thing. And then I have a special pick of the week, but I'm not going to tip my hat yet on that. Okay. That's been the fun side of things around here. Yeah,
and my pick of the week comes from my recent vacation. So
awesome.
Good nice summer teasers stuff there. Yeah. This is a lighter version of WELSTech. Maybe we'd call it WELSTech Light. Over the summer, we this summer are taking a little time to go through a book review, Tech Like a Pirate by Matt Miller. And we are up to chapters 7 and 8, and more good stuff to talk about. We've had I think, some great conversations about some super practical resources. And I think that's one of the strengths of this book is the associated website that gives all kinds of examples and links and relevant to today as technology moves quickly for a paper book, but to have that kind of associated resource, super helpful.
Definitely. So today we're doing chapters 7 and 8. So I'll kind of kick things off with chapter 7. It's titled Charting the Course to a Learning Expedition. And I think if I were to summarize this chapter, it would be break down those classroom walls, because you don't have to be bound by the four walls you're enclosed in anymore. It's such a big world out there, and you can connect and explore in really creative ways. So expedition, exploring is kind of the focus of this. And there are 3 types of explorers that he outlined in the chapter. First off, the one I'm kind of referring to of exploring the world is a geographical explorer. And the number one tool of choice is Google in that space, because Google has maps, but they also have treks and Google Earth and tour building and projects. The list kind of goes on and on. They have this really cool mapping tool, and you can use it in so many ways. Martin, I wasn't familiar with treks, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole. I don't know if you've ever been there, but
I wasn't familiar with it either, but I didn't get a chance to look at it like you did. What do you think?
It's really amazing. So I actually, you can go to all these different places, and it's like a personal viewpoint at the places. I went to Yosemite, to El Capitan, and watched these people climb this mountain. It was pretty cool. And, there's like some expert climbers, and you can just see it from their point of view. You can go to all these different places along the mountain and see where they are and how high up they are, and click on that particular place and see what the view is like from there. And it gets kind of scary as they get closer to the top. But they slept on the mountain. You can see how they slept on a little bitty kind of rock ledge, like you're seeing in this view and stuff. And when you start, you can see all these distant places, from the ground level. And then as you climb, you can just enjoy this perspective that they get as they go up. Not that I would be looking over this direction if I were climbing this mountain, but yeah, it's really impressive tool. And obviously, El Capitan is not the only thing you can do in Google Treks. You can do a lot of different locations. Just really fun to explore, and that personal viewpoint can't be beat. It's like you're standing there with them. It's really amazing. And you can interact with them as well. There's, narrative along with it. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah, I was surprised at the number of tools that Google provides, or kind of tools that have been created around Google tools, even just using Google tools. So.
Yeah, we have a great video we're going to embed in the show notes if you're interested in learning more about that. Their creation tools and things, they give you an overview of that. I know I went on a trip recently with Martin Luther College Alumni Association, and it was all mapped out for us, what days and times we were going to be, and descriptions of the places we were visiting, and what kind of clothes we should wear, and all kinds of things like that Steve Balza had taken the time to put into a project for us. And it's really useful. And I can imagine in the classroom, as you're exploring places, it would be really wonderful to set up those points of interest and stuff.
One kind of eye-opening moment for me, it's not super significant, but kind of a nice tip. He talks about trying to marry the classroom experience, the analog experience, with the virtual experience. So make it extra fun and memorable with a few adjustments. He says, change the lighting in your room to match the location you're studying. Maybe decorate appropriately. He talks about, a French bistro setting if you're visiting Paris or something like that, and just kind of accent the room to give that flavor, so it doesn't have to all be digital. There can be kind of an analog flavor as well. It's kind of bringing the virtual and the analog together. Kind of neat.
Definitely. All right. Again, 3 types of explorers. We talked about geographical. The second one he mentioned was informational. So just researching things and learning more about them. And I loved his first go-to place. That's the library, and those talented librarians who are excellent at research, and not forgetting to tap into them and allow them to assist and answer questions and guide you as well. One website that he mentioned was Wonderopolis, which is a very kid-friendly environment for doing research, like why do some animals have nicknames, or what are pink winks, or do you use any unique animal nicknames where you live? And so just examples of ways that you can kind of start exploring and discovering different areas of the country or whatever it may be. This is wonderopolis.org.
Nice.
Yeah.
One thing he talked about in this section, which I thought was probably worth highlighting, is the importance of media literacy, understanding sources, what are good sources, credible sources, what are more questionable sources, how to kind of get to the bottom of the credibility. Talked about common sense media and some of the literary resources there, or literacy resources there. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind as you're going into some of these places, or taking some of these and putting them in your classroom. You have to help the kids understand that everything on the internet isn't necessarily fair game or true.
Yeah, he gave some great examples of this, extending an advanced Spanish class where the students got to explore things they were personally interested in. One student created guitar lessons in Spanish, and another did a workout guide, but all in Spanish. And so, not restricting them, but allowing them to explore specific things that they're interested in, but also keeping the Spanish aspect in the work. And so great example there.
Yep.
And then the last type of explorer in this chapter was virtual exploring. And this would be virtual reality, augmented reality, that kind of thing. We've talked a lot about that on the show, Martin. There was a whole conference on it by our friends at Christ in Media a year or two ago. I think maybe that was last year. I loved his quote in this section of the book. He said, "This part of the book is the most likely to go out of date quickly." Very true. I even had trouble finding links to things that were pretty up to date in terms of virtual reality and augmented reality. I did find something that you might like, Martin, a Wakelet that looks pretty robust on the topics. So if you're into using Wakelets, or if you want to look for resources around virtual and augmented reality, this Wakelet might be the place to go. And we'll definitely include a link in the show notes to this virtual reality Wakelet that someone's compiled.
Yep, or compiling, and that's kind of the beauty
True.
of these resources, that they can be added to, modified as things change. And this obviously is an area that is changing pretty rapidly. And I would think education is going to be one of those landscapes that'll look totally different, 6 to 12 months from now in this space than before. So it's hard to keep on top of.
Definitely. So that was chapter 7. Chapter 8 goes into learning with new friends around the world. So again, kind of 2 aspects to this. And one of them is breaking down those classroom walls and connecting with people in other locations. And then the obvious one is learning with or collaborating, where you're working together, but from a distance. And so think of all the things the students are learning as they're having these experiences. The chapter kicked off with a story about 2 girls who grew up next door to each other, and always said that they would be teachers and teach together and that kind of thing.
Raise their kids together. Yep.
Exactly. They ended up both being teachers as adults, but one was in Arizona where home was, and one had moved to Michigan. And so not exactly next door to each other anymore. But they both taught 5th grade, and they decided to use some video conferencing software, maybe something like
I think it
Google
was Google Meet, yeah, or
Meet.
Google Hangouts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Hangouts. I'm so yesterday. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, to connect the two classrooms. And it went really well. The kids were excited to collaborate with the classroom, kind of on the opposite side of the country from them. And then the one lady from Michigan went home for Christmas break and popped into the Arizona classroom when they were having the video conferencing with a substitute in her classroom in Michigan. And so her kids in Michigan were just freaked out because there she
Mm-hmm.
was in this other place that they had been video conferencing with. I thought it was a really neat story and
It
a
is.
great way to make those kind of connections.
Yeah. He talks again about try, refine, repeat, this iterative process of trying to try new things and tweak what doesn't work and enhance what does, and go through that process. And this would be an area where you're going to have some failures, but I think having, like he says, a good partner and a good plan is certainly going to help you. And he talks about the price being right here. This is a really inexpensive way to expand that classroom and bring some nice outside influences into the classroom, and broaden the kids' horizons.
Right. You definitely can use video conferencing software for free. Obviously the G Suite is a great place to collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
You can see each other's cursors and docs and all kinds of things like that. It's a pretty cool experience, actually. And then just having a place to kind of pull it all together, like a Google Classroom or maybe your learning management system that everyone can get logged into easily. So very low cost effort. And the basics of it are connect and maybe read a story together or do some kind of things together where you're connecting the children from the different classrooms and in a location. Obviously important to find the right partner to do that with. And there's a lot of sites out on the web that help you connect with other classrooms and things like that. But then once you do that, maybe taking it to another level. And that's where the creativity comes in. The resources to use, but maybe you set it up as a mystery Skype where they have to figure out what part of the country these other students are from.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I had not heard of that, but that is a great idea, just to kind of schedule something with some location that you don't tell the kids where it is, and they've got to figure out who they're talking to and where those kids are based on conversation and questions.
Exactly. Have them act out a drama for each other, do something like a long distance Kahoot. There's so many creative ways that you could connect. And, kind of an underlying theme of both of these chapters is that when the kids have a strong emotional response to a learning experience, it sticks in their memory. They're going to remember their friends from Michigan and that experience they had as fifth graders, for quite a while. And it's going to, tie back to the things that they were learning at that time. One really fun collaboration experience I enjoyed hearing about was doing a story together, but then having the students pair up and write a different ending to the story. And just a good example, Martin, I think you mentioned his website is just amazing, the Ditch That Textbook website, but he has a page dedicated to one story, many endings, and using Google Slides to do that. And so you can actually get his slide deck as an example, and it has different planning documents and things like that in it. So definitely check out the Ditch That Textbook website.
Yep. One thing I was thinking of as I read this chapter is the classroom technology for this to go well needs to be pretty good. So you need a big enough screen and audio capturing, the microphone and speaker situation needs to be not just, something that you're throwing a laptop in front of the classroom with. You've got to, I think, approach that with some care, get some good microphones that work so that the kids can speak to each other and hear each other effectively. Don't chintz out on that piece of it, because that's going to be part of the experience too.
And likely you're going to have that moment where you sweat like Martin did at Senate Convention when they first voted.
Yeah, you should have a plan B. Yes.
Yeah. And try again. So
Yep,
iterative,
exactly.
little
Yep.
steps forward.
Okay. Anything else about chapter 8 you want to talk about, Sally?
I think we're good to go. And nearing the end of the book. So one more episode of WELSTech focused on chapter 9 and kind of wrapping things up.
Yeah, and we'll have a little interview. We'll tease that a little bit to a person who did a paper on the book, and we'll talk to him about what his findings were.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Sally, I think we can move on to our picks of the week.
Okay, well, I just need to preface this pick. Martin and I, over time, have picked hardware. I would say the ratio has been a little bit tilted toward Martin Spriggs having a lot of shiny electronic things. That's fun. But I'd say this is the trump card that I've brought to the table, the ultimate. And that is my newest shiny electronic thing. Let me just share my screen quick. I'm so excited. The Draper household now has a laser engraver / cutting machine. And
oh boy.
Man, have I been smelling a lot of burnt wood lately because I've been doing some engraving. Really exciting. So this is computer driven. I'm using a lot of SVG vector type files, and I'm burning all kinds of stuff. I've done wood and cork and even the front of a leather notebook. So the sky's the limit with me now. I have a laser in home, something we've kind of dreamed about for a while, and just something to used to put llamas on way more.
I was going to say there's going to be some burning llamas someplace.
There definitely are. Yeah. So why a laser machine? Well, it's kind of a next step for us. My husband's into woodworking and has a CNC machine, which is a computer driven carving machine with a blade. This uses obviously a very high potent laser. And that means that you have to be extremely careful and not burn down your house and not subject your eyes to the laser beam or anything like that. So we're learning. It's definitely got a learning curve to it, but expecting that we'll be able to enjoy it for quite some time. So far, so good. Oh, awesome. And the coolest thing, they have this boring gray version of it, which is gray, blue, kind of standard colors. But instead, I got the red gold version, as in Iron Man colors. Super cool. Who would have thought that laser cutters would come in red and gold, not gray?
Right. So whose is this? This is Sally's or Kevin's?
Kevin's busy right now. He's doing some home remodeling. So Sally gets to learn it first, but it'll be Kevin's. Yeah.
Nice.
Sally will just encourage him with it.
And how big a material can you work with?
It's a 15 by 17 cutting bed, but actually it has the ability to switch out the side rails and make it double that width. So you can do up to 36 inches. And so that's our plan, is to enhance it and make it quite a bit larger.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah. That is a showstopper right there.
Comes with a rotary turning thing, so you can do things like Christmas balls and Yeti mugs and all kinds of things like that as well. So haven't tried that yet, but stay tuned.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, my pick is going to pale in comparison, but I like it anyway.
It's okay.
All right. My pick of the week actually came from our vacation. We were out in Colorado and Utah about a month ago camping. So we take our camper out there. And in Utah, southeast Utah, we camped in a designated dark sky area. If you go to darksky.org, you can read all about what dark sky areas are. But a dark sky area is a place where there is an absence of ambient light. So you're far away from cities, and you're in a place where the atmosphere and your elevation combine to have just a spectacular view of the stars in the sky. Not just stars, but you can see satellites going across the sky, comets, all those things. And it was one of our first experiences, just kind of sitting at a campsite. We even just got away a little bit from the campfire, sat in the road. There was nobody coming along. And we just looked at the stars, 2-3 nights in a row. One nice thing, and you can see all the stars, planets, Milky Way, all that stuff. But one app that we used, and there are a bunch of apps, was a stargazing app called Night Sky. And I'll put a link. My pick is really an article on space.com about the best stargazing apps that are out there. Night Sky is listed in there, but if you have an Android phone or something else, it lists all kinds of stuff there. But basically what the app does is you point it at the sky and it tells you exactly what you're looking for. Hey, this is, or what you're looking at. This is such and such constellation. This is Venus. This is Mars. This is a Starlink satellite. This is a direct TV satellite. All those things are listed there, and it's amazing what you can see. And it makes it super interesting as well if you can look in the sky and know what you're looking at. And these tools like Night Sky have all kinds of filters, so you can filter it down to just planets or just constellations, or you can remember things and get reminded when something is over the horizon now that you can now see it. It tells you what nights might be best, depending on where the moon is, because that's going to affect what you can see in the sky. Just all kinds of cool things that you can do with this app. There is a free version. There's usually a paid version where you get a few more features, but the free version was awesome. We used it each night to help us look at or to help us understand what we were looking at. So that's my pick, kind of just stargazing apps in general. And there are places in the Midwest that are better than others. They're not quite the same as kind of going to a dark sky area, but if you go to darksky.org, you can actually find areas that are usually northern Wisconsin if you're a Wisconsinite, but we have listeners from all across the world, and this site can help you find those areas too. So pretty cool. That was one of the highlights of our vacation.
So did you identify constellations? Were there some that were more prominent? Or
it depended on the night, but yeah, I mean, we saw most of them depending on that time of year. But it was pretty cool. And I've not been a big telescope, look in the sky kind of guy, but this was kind of a new ball game.
Sure.
That you could see most everything with the bare eyes that God gave you.
Pretty amazing.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
I would say stargazing maybe trumps all hardware picks. How about that?
Yeah. God made it.
Awesome. That's right.
All right. Let's move on to community news and feedback.
Well, we have a couple of things to mention. Earlier this summer, we talked about MLC hosting a virtual open learning conference, and they have put out recordings and resources from all the sessions that were part of that conference back in June. So if you're interested specifically in AI, they had 3 different presenters on the first day. What is AI? How is it changing the face of education? How can it transform teacher productivity and transform student assessment? And then the second day was more a kind of a variety of topics. Saxon Math is no longer publishing. Now what do we do? How do you empower parents as family spiritual leaders? Martin, I recognize this WELSTech friendly person. Brad Gergel presented on empowering parents as family spiritual leaders. That's an awesome topic that he knows a lot about. And then how do you make the most of every opportunity when the days are so varied, evil, good, confusing, wonderful, and frustrating. So lots of good resources shared here. It looks like you can get clock hours still. But one note is that the recordings and resources are only available through August 27th. So if you're interested in open learning from MLC, you need to get out to that website and grab those presentations and resources so you can make use of that.
Very nice.
And then just a question that we'll pose to our listening audience today from Sarah Schilling. Sarah wrote and said, are you aware of any resources or research on pros and cons and impacts of LCD exterior church signs? We're currently reviewing options for replacing our church sign at our ELS congregation and researching the value of LCD versus traditional signage. And boy, she asked a great question, and I've got nothing to offer. I wonder if anyone who's listening today can contact us or share with us information if you've gone down that path, even if you chose not to do it. But if you looked into LCD and weighed the pros and cons, I think that would be great if we could share that with our listening audience, and Sarah in particular.
It'd be interesting. Yeah. And maybe even on top of that, if you have purchased an LCD, how are you using it? Maybe some innovative ways and things that you're sharing with the community that you found to be helpful or useful in your outreach or in reach. So
Definitely.
very nice. If you want to ask a question or contribute to the show, go to wellstech.wels.net. That is our show notes page. You'll not only find all of our episodes there, all the way back to episode number 1, and all the show notes that Sally dutifully and devotedly keeps up to date. You can also leave us a message there, or find all our social networks where we keep an ear to, or send us an email, wellstech@wels.net, and we will share that if you let us do that, and we'd be happy to hear from you. So please do that. Sally, I think that is going to be a wrap for episode, what did I say, 706. Maybe I would close with maybe a subtitle to probably all of our WELSTech activities. That's that African proverb that was in the book that we were reading. We didn't talk about that, but I highlighted it here. African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's the way we do it on WELSTech. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.